Well, good afternoon, everyone. Things are looking better for much of North Carolina with Hurricane Irma, but we are not yet in the clear, and we can't let our guard down. Irma is a powerful storm, and we've seen the terrible damage in the Caribbean. It's also a large storm, roughly the size of the state of Texas. So we know that even if North Carolina is spared a direct hit, some parts of our state could still see serious impacts, particularly in the western part of our state. Those impacts include potential flash floods, tornadoes, power outages, landslides in the mountains, and on the coast, even though it may be clear there, rip currents, which could be starting as early as this weekend. We also know that forecast tracks can change. Even though the current forecast no longer shows us directly in the crosshairs, that could shift, and we still need to be prepared because even a glancing blow can cause damage from such a powerful storm. So we here in North Carolina are continuing to get ready, and I encourage families and businesses across our state to do the same. Our thoughts and our prayers are with those who are already picking up the pieces from Irma and from Harvey, for that matter, and especially those who have lost loved ones. And we are thinking about the millions of people who are in the direct path of Irma, including Florida. Members of our Air National Guard have been to Key West to evacuate nursing home patients. And the Guard is also helping in the Caribbean, transporting needed equipment and personnel to the U.S. Virgin Islands. We're grateful for their service, and we're grateful for all of the first responders, emergency management personnel, nonprofits, volunteers, and so many others who are preparing for and responding to Irma. Because this storm could still impact any part of our state, the state of emergency is still in effect and will remain so until the threat has passed. As expected, impacts become clearer. We will position and shift resources to where we think they will be needed, and some of that is already occurring, shifting some resources from the east to the west. Our state Emergency Operations Center remains activated, and we will continue those operations through the weekend or as long as they're needed. I have with me today Eric Hooks, just to the right over here, who is the Secretary of the Department of Public Safety. I have Mike Sprayberry, our Emergency Management Director, Tim Little, who is our Department of Transportation Chief Engineer, Colonel Glenn McNeil, who is the commander of the North Carolina Highway Patrol, and Brigadier General Todd Hunt with the North Carolina National Guard. And I'm now going to ask Emergency Management Director Mike Sprayberry to provide us with some additional updates on storm preparations. Mike?
Thank you, sir. First of all, I want to thank all of our local county partners who are working hard to prepare their folks for the impacts of Hurricane Irma. We all know that disasters begin and end at the local level. The state EOC has been receiving a lot of messages and prayers from our local folks, and we really appreciate your kind thoughts. As the governor said, the state EOC does remain activated. We're at a level 4 with our North Carolina emergency management personnel only. We're conducting daily conference calls with the National Weather Service and our county partners. This helps us maintain situational awareness on any changes in the forecast track and also lets us know what our county folks are doing as far as preparedness. We intend to activate to a level 1 on Sunday, the 10th of September. This means our state, federal, nonprofit volunteers, and private sector partners will be here with us. Although the forecast is becoming more favorable for the state of North Carolina, the State Emergency Response Team remains focused on planning for Hurricane Irma, and as the governor said, we are repositioning resources in order to respond quickly to the need. Based on our threat analysis, we're currently moving staff and equipment from eastern North Carolina to western North Carolina. We're also going to maintain our readiness posture in central North Carolina. Our current plan is now to focus on 2 staging areas in Asheville and Greensboro. These staging areas will be activated on Sunday, the 10th of September. We're not going to activate the Kinston staging area at this time unless we see something change in the forecast track. In concert with our American Red Cross, our Division of Social Services over at DHHS, volunteer agencies, and most importantly, our local county partners, we are prepared to engage in mass sheltering and feeding operations. Our Duke Energy and Electric Co-op partners are prepared to surge into affected areas to engage in power restoration activities as soon as the storm passes. The CERT team's response resources are currently alerted and ready to respond as called. This includes road management, debris clearance, search and rescue, hazmat, medical services, law enforcement, firefighting, and wastewater system operators. We're planning on recovery operations with staff identified for preliminary damage assessments. We're also engaging in a recovery support function for housing, and we're also having a county conference call today to discuss debris management practices. Finally, our FEMA partners are establishing an incident support base at Fort Bragg that's going to have food, water, blankets, cots, and other commodities. The FEMA Federal Coordinating Officer is currently in the state, as is our Federal Liaison Officer from FEMA, and we expect to have an Incident Management Assistance Team from FEMA on Sunday, arriving at the state EOC. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike, and thank you for all your team is doing to be ready. I, too, want to thank our county partners for their hard work preparing for this storm. One of the reasons North Carolina has such a resilient and strong team is because of our partnerships with the counties and our state agencies. We also know that our Department of Transportation is important. Again, all road work will be stopped as of 7 p.m. tonight. They're seeing an increase of the number of people traveling south to north on our interstate highways. We want to make sure that it's clear for evacuation. And I'd like to ask Tim Little with the Department of Transportation to give us an update on what DOT is doing to get ready for the storm. So, Tim?
I'd also like to take this time to thank our DOT employees across the state who are working very hard to get ready for the possible hurricane and the impacts to North Carolina. As the hurricane has made it a path more toward the west, our direct impacts have shifted towards the west. And we're monitoring that and getting resources ready to move, if needed, from the east to the west. The part in the west that we're most concerned about is possible rock slides, mudslides in the mountain areas. We have staff on hand that's going out there and monitoring those problem areas and keeping a check on those, as well as our geotechnical unit, which is based in Raleigh, on hand to deploy if needed, and also contractors that specialize in that type of work to be ready to be deployed to those sites as well. Our indirect impacts to us are our neighboring states and traffic that's moving, as the governor said, from north to south. Those interstate routes along 77, 26, and I-95 are becoming more congested, but they're flowing well at this time. Our TIMS system is a great indicator that shows you, the impacts that we're seeing. We're monitoring those areas, also shifting our incident management assistance patrols to areas that are needed. Right now, they're going out to I-26 in the western part of the state to help in those areas to help mitigate some of the issues we may be having. One thing I want to make just as a reminder, as the storm passes and our road crews are out there cleaning up, please, make sure that you're aware of that. Their safety is very important, and they're going to be in the roadway. They're going to be in harm's way. So we just stress that we hope traffic slows down and be cognizant of those workers that are doing that work to clear the debris from the roadway.
Thank you, Tim, and we appreciate everything that people at DOT are doing. We're keeping in close contact with the National Weather Service, the National Hurricane Center, and we're keeping an eye on the track. This storm is very large. Tracks can change. So our state and local governments are staying ready, and we want people to be ready as well. ready with their evacuation routes, ready with their emergency kits, continuing to check local weather on the forecast of the storm to see if there are any alerts that they should have. And again, I will point out readync.org. Readync.org is a website that has information that you would need to get ready for this storm, and also contains up-to-date, real-time update on the situation and what's going on with emergency management and our state roads. So I'll open it up for questions that you might have. That's correct.
Director Spranger mentioned the Greensboro and Asheville staging areas. Is that what they are, staging areas?
They're staging areas where equipment and personnel would go. We were going to have one in Kinston, but right now it's going to be in Greensboro and in Asheville. Yes.
We've heard
so many people trying to evacuate from Florida, coming up through North Carolina highways, and of course all over the southeast. Is there been any discussion about helping these displaced residents? I mean, is there a concern that we may run out of hotel space, or that they may not have places to go once once traffic gets too congested?
Well, we want to offer our assistance to other states as needed. We are in contact with other states, and particularly when this storm threat passes, and if North Carolina is not hit badly, and if we got a glancing blow and we're able to take care of people here in North Carolina, we certainly will share resources with people from other states, and particularly from Florida. This looks like it will be a catastrophic event in Florida. And in the past, we've shared resources with other states, and we stand ready to do that as well. But I don't want us in North Carolina to let our guard down, because this big storm, it could change. And even now with tropical force winds or even tropical depression winds in the west, and rain, rock slides, landslides, it could be a tough time out there. So we have to remain vigilant.
I have a
Yes.
question for Mr. Little. With the traffic from southern states, and if there was a possibility that people in North Carolina or parts of North Carolina would need to evacuate as well, is there any bigger traffic plan, or are there any maybe even thoughts of reversing traffic flow for southern bound lanes and using those as northbound lanes as well?
Currently, there's no plan to utilize, for instance, I-95 and making everything go north or south at this time. What I would like to stress is that our State Transportation Operations Center, which is housed here, is constantly monitoring that TIM site. So what we can do is get messages out on our overhead message boards and make the public aware of places that are going to be problematic. But so far, what we have seen is for the most part, everything is green in our TIM site, so traffic's flowing very well. It is heavier than usual, but it's flowing very well at this time.
Is there any maybe catastrophic plan that the state does have?
Well, in case that we do have, for instance, if we had some catastrophic event, that there are detour routes at each county or each entity, metropolitan area, that they imply and hopefully move that traffic around as they need to. For instance, I-95 301 is a backup route to it as well. So we can move traffic over to 301 if I-95 became too congested.
I have a quick follow-on to that same, at least in that same thread. We learned yesterday that all of the hurricane evacuation routes in the state are east of or very close to east of 95. With this storm trending to the mountains, would it make sense to reevaluate and include some hurricane evacuation routes to the west of 95, given this storm, or take it where you will? Maybe that's what the governor.
Part of that is that, as I answered the question before, a lot of those routes have other routes that are used maybe not designated as an evacuation route, but when you have an incident on some of these major routes, there are alternative routes that we will get the message out to use those alternative routes.
Quick follow, though. I mean, presumably the benefit of having hurricane evacuation routes is there's signage up already that drivers can then say, okay, this is where I'm supposed to go. I mean, presumably under the scenario you just laid out, you're relying on word getting out.
Well, we do use the overhead message boards to get that word out as well. So there is some real-time information that's placed on those interstate routes that give travelers that sense of security that they can. And also, you know, Google, all the navigational systems are tied in and get that information from our TIM site. So obviously, when you go on Google, that gives you that information real time as well. Yes, sir.
One thing we do know is that in the western part of our state, they're not that used to hurricane events. So evacuation routes, you need to figure that out when you know what the threat is, because you don't want to lead people into a threat, and information could be gotten to people of where they need to go and where they might need to evacuate to. I think the most likely scenario here is that in North Carolina at least, and particularly since right now it doesn't look like this is a coastal event, people would in most instances stay home, and we'd want to make sure that they were safe in their homes and they got power back as quickly as possible and they weren't injured by degree. Would you agree with that, Mike?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And you know, an evacuation in North Carolina is led by local authorities. And so you're wondering about how the word gets out. Well, the local authorities for each jurisdiction are going to instruct their residents how to evacuate. And so that's how it happens here. Now, the governor's got the statutory authority to make that happen, but who better than the local authorities who live there and work there and they know their roads the best? Those are the ones that are going to be making that decision.
Mr. Sprague, just regarding National Guard, you said you had about 300 or so coming in. Is that still the same amount, and do you anticipate any alterations on that?
You know, as we analyze what the threat, presents to us, we can surge up or go down as needed. We want to try to be as efficient as possible. We want to have the right mix of forces out on the field to make sure that we can respond quickly and decisively to any threat that comes up. And so right now we've got a good mix of what I think we have with engineers that can do things like the debris removal, cut and shove, hasty road repair. They're also there. They can haul commodities. They can do rescue. So they've got a lot of different skill sets. We can put them to work in warehouses for us. So we train like this together with our National Guard partners. They have what's called force packages, and we think we've got a pretty good blend right now. And again, they've got a lot more than 300 available to us should we need it.
But you have 300 right now, roughly?
About 315.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you all very much.